Hello and welcome back to my channel. If you'd like to support the channel, my children's books are available in the description below. I do want to try and avoid doom-laden content on the current state of things, and this is despite the fact that doom-laden videos often get considerably more views than more nourishing content. I will, however, always endeavour to give an alternative angle to this sort of material. To give a greater context, you should watch my video on the managerial class called Have You Noticed, as this pertains to this video a lot. In that video, I discuss how the state has become a self-serving managerial class. It is supposed to be the role of government to improve the lives of its citizens through service. However, at the moment it seems entirely preoccupied with self-interest, either through protecting its position or increasing the wealth of those involved in it. A big part of biking is the sense of freedom. We crave this as humans and are only happy when we feel free. This was noted by the ancient Greeks and carries through to us in the modern day. Freedom is such a powerful word, it's been deeply ingrained in British culture for hundreds of years. Our modern society acts like a prison of the mind. You can be imprisoned psychologically with things like debt or laws. With the rise in digital technology, it's never been so easy to mentally imprison an individual. This is far easier than trying to use force, which will always ultimately fail. The prison of the mind is a root cause for many of the mental health issues we face today. People are less likely to rebel if the prison is invisible. However, they can sense its effect all around them. Many can't even quantify it. They have it as an underlying feeling of oppression in all aspects of their life. A prison of the mind is always worse than a physical prison. Even if your physical body is imprisoned, the freedom to think and dream will always keep you going. This is why having a mental prison has such a detrimental effect on mental health. It's also very much more practical for a malicious state to pursue this route. In the Soviet Union, the state had to employ 4% of the population as internal spies. Without modern technology, they had to use numbers and force. However, in the modern world, it's very different. Digital technology offers a chance for abuse and control like nothing we have ever faced. Here in the UK, we rely on what is called compliance policing. The police are outnumbered thousands to one, so in our society this means the vast majority of citizens are peaceful and have peace as a common goal. This is what keeps society pleasant for everyone, as we all recognise peace is in our own best interests. It's very difficult to control a large group of people by force. If someone kicks off, it can take up to 5 police officers to subdue them. However, you can mentally subdue the population, and the effect is far more powerful and much cheaper to implement. Not everyone in positions of power are bad people. This is a common misconception. It is of course a mix of people. It's very easy to reflect on history and divide groups into good guys and bad guys. However, everything is always many complex shades of grey. The bad guys are not necessarily apparent until it's too late. It's easy to point fingers after the fact, but the majority simply were not aware of who the bad guys actually were until much later. There has been a creeping and growing state control over recent decades, and as information spreads, the state now finds itself backed into a corner. The only solution it understands is to push ever harder on controlling your life and thoughts and use whatever means at its disposal to maintain its position. People are starting to realise the old systems are no longer working in their interest, and inevitably as they wake up, the state will push ever harder for ever more control. A government doesn't have to be obviously evil to ruin your life. Often it will start with good intentions, then bad elements run it off the rails, and this escalates into catastrophe. We often assume a bad government will be wearing jackboots and skulls, but often the real controllers appear in a well-tailored suit with obvious good intentions. The majority involved in any power structure are often convinced they are good people doing the right thing. They are often unaware of what's actually taking place until after the fact. This is especially apparent if they're bought into an ideology, as they're far less likely to question a given path. What you must always be aware of, especially with politicians, is they score very highly on the dark triad of psychology. This is a combination of narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy. The very nature of government attracts this sort of person seeking power and control. The comedian Billy Connolly had a great line which said, "Anyone who actively seeks power is exactly the sort of person who should be blocked from it." Unfortunately, in such a power structure, it's very appealing to the worst kind of people. Society is always in a continual struggle against those who seek to abuse power. This is often why the people who set up governments like to put in fail-safes such as the Americans have. For those of you who understand history, you will recognise the same patterns over and over, and probably like me you can see that pattern playing out now in the UK. We have reached a critical junction in our history which can tip either way. The UK is economically screwed with catastrophic debt and failing infrastructure, and the country is living way beyond its means. In a panic to protect itself, the state is exerting ever more control and is going hard in on propaganda. It's trying to force in controls on speech and using the internet and media to try and force its message onto the population. This current old system is in collapse, and the power structures involved will take any and all measures to protect themselves. Mankind has moved through various ages. We had the Age of Reason previously to this, but now we have moved into what's called the Information Age. This age gives you a lot of information, but doesn't allow people an opportunity to think critically. Critical thought is pushed out of the education process, and without space to think, it's a fervent ground for ideologies to present themselves as solutions. Unable to think and mentally overwhelmed, people will look for simple narrative frameworks with which to orientate themselves, rather than put in critical effort to think out their positions on various subjects. They will just pick out an ideology best suited to where they think their values lie. There's a degree of herd mentality in this too, as humans fear ostracization from the tribe, so will often go along with ideologies simply out of convenience to themselves. True power in this modern time is whomever controls the flow of information. Invariably, due to human weakness, whomever controls this information will always abuse it. We've seen this many times in the past. However, it's interesting to watch the establishment struggle now. The original tech the internet was based on was designed in such a way to ensure its function even in the event of catastrophic nuclear war. Trying to control information through key conduits such as traditional media simply doesn't work anymore. You can block a river, but it will always find ways, and digital media is very much like this. A key tool in the use of propaganda is the use of language. New controls are often presented using language such as "for your safety" to get you to buy into it. They may also use other language such as employing the use of children. A far-reaching spy bill will masquerade under language designed to appeal to you. No one would be against a child safety bill, for example. Due to most being overwhelmed with information, it has become a common tactic in propaganda to pass unpopular ideas into law using this method. With the control of information, truth is often a major casualty. This is why the UK state is currently pushing through various plans to control the flow of information. This is to ensure its own information receives priority and so it can maintain power and position. Its final play in this is the digital ID, where the state wishes to create a centralised data profile on each citizen. It's apparent there is no real justifiable reason for this, and regardless of where you fall on the political spectrum, history has shown us this will be terrible for everyone involved. It will curtail your rights more than anything else in history. In all of history, all the issues have come from an abuse of power, and this puts too much power in the hands of too few. It will absolutely be abused. All of history has shown us this. A good example of this was post 9/11 and 7/7. A lot of terror laws were rushed through under the claim of security and protection. Many of the population bought into this because they had an underlying fear. However, these invariably ended up being abused, even at the local council level. As an example, they were used to spy on cycling groups, or people who weren't recycling. Local councils used them to spy on individuals for even the smallest of reasons. And as always in any power structure, these new laws were heavily abused by anyone who had even a little power. Those abusing the rights of others would have been convinced they were doing the right thing, even although to an outsider it's an obvious overreach and infringement on people's individual rights and privacy. There have been many genocides perpetrated in history using such an information database. Did you know IBM built the centralized database for the Nazis? In amongst all of this, anyone who abuses any sort of power is often called a fascist, and this term has been thrown around with abandon. Most people assume that fascism comes with jackboots, but the origin of the word actually comes from Latin. The original Latin word, which I'll fail to pronounce, is spelled F-A-S-C-E-S. It means an individual stick can be broken, but a bundle of sticks cannot. At the most simple level, the meaning of fascism is using one larger group's power to oppress the individual into submission. This can happen on both ends of the political spectrum. As a state starts to fail, it makes a power grab, and free speech is often the first casualty. The importance of free speech can never be underestimated. Language is often how you think, so the control over words is an obvious attempt to control how you think. Many do not understand that having difficult conversations is how we get to work out ideas to determine the good and bad ideas. Many of the rights for oppressed groups were fought for using free speech as a basis. Groups who had been oppressed could use free speech to discuss their ideas, gain traction, and let others understand their position. This has led to rights and improvements for everyone. To control speech says you don't trust people to effectively argue out ideas, and there's an arrogance to believe your ideas are the best. People who wish to control speech tell us a lot about their own internal nature. It's pretty much a given as soon as someone wants to control speech, you know that their intentions aren't good because they fear other ideas. There are universal ideas we've come to through long discussion that we can all universally agree on, personal freedom being one of them. We understand that a human being is only truly happy if they are free. Anyone who seeks to control speech has a vested interest in the control and suppression of groups they disagree with. Just as any group that threatens existing power structures will invariably feel the extent of control on their speech first. You often hear that we need to control bad speech because people have dangerous ideas. But what are these dangerous ideas? There are of course many awful ideas, but generally through debate we can agree on what those are. The majority of the population are reasonable, good people who seek peace and who respect others. Often, however, the ideas that are a threat to those wanting to maintain power end up being maligned and suppressed under a cloud of obfuscation. Free speech is also a great way to identify people with bad intentions, so letting them speak not only shows their nature but also lets others engage with them and dismantle their ideas. We've seen great progression in society due to those prepared to do battle in the realm of debate. Open, honest debate is the only way to ever reach truths. In its desperate position, the state has now resorted to bully tactics. I'm sure you're well aware that if you're watching online, the state has engaged in various bully tactics on those who disagree with its narrative. The state will claim a morally superior position, but it's nothing to do with that, it's all about control. We've watched the police make visits to homes to speak to people and charge them, and this behaviour is now showing its true intent. They often visit the weaker elements of society, old people, single mums, poor people. They visit at unusual hours, and this is done deliberately to throw people off guard and is a classic example of a Stasi. It's to keep people on the edge with a visit late at night. This has the effect of trying to instill fear in others and is nothing short of bullying. Exerting power over individuals is a very typical move of a fascist that fears ideas and rational debate. It knows that if it were to come to a debate, its current position could be easily pulled apart. This is why we have trial by jury, to protect your sovereign rights. It's to prevent anyone in power bullying, imprisoning and controlling an individual person they disagree with. It's also a good indication of the weakness in an authority's position that it has to resort to these tactics. It shows a degree of desperation. If it was secure in its position and focused on doing good, it wouldn't have to visit people in the middle of the night. Something has went very wrong in our society if these tactics are being implemented. As I have mentioned, the UK is a compliance-based society. We all have the general common goal of peace in our lives. Therefore, the state does simply not have enough resources to impose its will, even if a modest number started rebelling. And this is why it's chosen the route of digital ID. The idea is it will act as a mental prison for everyone in the UK, where you're forced to police your own thoughts and actions to protect yourself. If you find yourself maligned by the state, this will go onto your digital ID central database. It will be used as a method to block you from ever having a normal life. The price you will pay will be enormous. A classic method often employed by states is a smear tactic, and you will have seen this often. People who are perceived as a threat to its power will often be smeared or have a false claim against them. It would be very easy to just simply add this to your digital ID. These sort of smear and control tactics can actually be traced back to the Bolsheviks, who had a rule on specific tactics to be used to control or damage an individual they disagreed with. Can you imagine if you were smeared on a central database and stuck with that forever with no means of disproving it? Blocked from jobs, resources, healthcare or finance. Traditionally, if someone done bad things, they would get a criminal record, but this would come after trial and proven beyond reasonable doubt. To remove this process effectively subjects you to witch hunts, with the onus on you to prove your innocence. With your entire life centralised, if any particular organisation took offence to you, this could be added to your digital database and used against you forever. Therefore, with a centralised personality profile effectively, you could be controlled for the rest of your life. Invariably, if someone wanted to impose this degree of control on people, it would inevitably be met with rebellion. This is why it's brought in such methods as digital ID over a long period of time. This prevents an obvious enemy to rebel against. People don't realise what's going on until it's too late. Due to the state now finding itself in a difficult position, it's exerting ever greater control and exerting ever more power over people's lives. However, the digital ID represents a line in the sand where it becomes apparent to all, and a decision has to be made by each individual on how to proceed. It's interesting to note rebellion beginning on every side of the political spectrum. Sides who were effectively at war with each other are now unifying against it because they can see the extent of control being implemented here. It's effectively controlling your mind at source, keeping you under control. The state will no longer have to send goons round or spy on you. You will imprison yourself mentally forever. You will often hear people say, well, it doesn't affect me. That sort of passive indifference has led to many great atrocities in history. It's probably crossed your mind that you may lose everything that matters to you if you choose to take a stand. You understand that if you stand up to authority, your life will change forever based on which step you take. So for people to cross that line, it becomes a very difficult and dangerous decision. It effectively represents a death of your current life. Mentally, you have to balance out the ramifications of any action you may take. Given the current path, this is a decision many of us may need to carefully consider. I am sure some of you have been thinking on this already. Even subconsciously, many people understand the implication. Some choose to turn a blind eye. UK culture has been through a lot of history and recognises that personal freedom of the individual is built deeply within us. Our systems and law and government were based on these individual rights, and culturally we also cannot stand a bully. In its current form, the state does not understand that rebelling against a bully is a classic deep British cultural trait. All of our historical heroes were rebels like Robin Hood or William Wallace. Our history as a country is one of defiance against tyrants, internal and external. It is also the home of the Magna Carta. The idea of individual rights are always more important than those of the state. Therefore, digital ID is fundamentally against the culture and values of the UK people. We are a free culture. This is very apparent in the art we produce. Often the best art and music is based around the sense of rebelling against power. Even our humour finds its roots in rebelling against this power, and the UK has produced some of the greatest comedians of all time. Whenever you see these creative people being bullied by the state, it's a classic canary in the coal mine for the health of a society. Power-hungry despots always seek to suppress creative individuals first. Art has the most power. Books, painting, film, music are all ideas, and these can do more damage to any power structure than guns. Historically, any power-hungry regime always goes after creative people first. As an artist myself, traditionally we are the first to be penalised. History is full of creative people who produced a work which critiqued the power structure. This ended up with them breaking rocks in a gulag. Freedom and creativity go together and are key to a prosperous and inventive society. It's very easy to see the most prosperous societies are always the ones that are most free. It's heartbreaking to watch the UK slip now, given it was always a beacon other societies aspire to. We made massive progress. The more free we became, the better we came. This is why I oppose the digital ID. It represents a prison of the mind and an end to British cultural values. One of the greatest books ever written on this subject is also one of my very favourites. The Gulag Archipelago by Alexander Solzhenitsyn. I strongly recommend you read it. I will leave you now with a quote from him. Unlimited power in the hands of limited people will always lead to cruelty. Thank you so much for watching, and bye bye!